The woman leaning against his gate post wore a dress so dusty it might have been white once. And when Xavier rode up that September evening in 1883, her eyes held the kind of desperation that made a man either turn away or change his life forever. He reined in his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Sadie, about 20 feet from the gate. The Montana Territory sun was setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows across his property just outside the growing town of Helena. Jackson was 32 years old, weathered from years of cattle work and solitude, and he had learned to be cautious of strangers appearing on his land unannounced. "Evening," he called out, his hand resting casually on his thigh, not far from where his revolver sat in its holster. "Can I help you, miss?" The woman straightened, and he could see she was young, probably in her early 20s, with dark hair that had escaped from what was once likely a neat bun. Her face was streaked with dust and what might have been tears, but her chin lifted with determination. "Are you Xavier?" she asked, her voice hoarse but steady. "I am." He dismounted slowly, keeping his distance. "And you are Naomi Olsen." She reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a folded piece of paper, holding it toward him. Her hand shook slightly. "I have traveled 3 weeks to find you. Your brother sent me." Jackson felt his entire body go rigid. "My brother is dead, has been for 5 years. Not Thomas," she said quickly. "William. He is alive, Mr. Xavier, but he is in terrible trouble. We all are." Jackson moved forward then, taking the paper from her hand. He recognized his younger brother's handwriting immediately, the same careful script their mother had taught both boys before she passed. His throat tightened as he read. "Jackson, if you are reading this, then Naomi made it through. We need help. The mining company has dammed up the river. The valley is dying. Crops are failing. Cattle are dying. They are forcing everyone to sell their land for nothing or watch their families starve. I know we parted on bad terms. I know I said things I did not mean. But these people have become my family, and they are good people. If you ever cared for me, come, please, William." Jackson read it twice, then looked up at Naomi. "Where is he?" "Paradise Valley. 3 weeks south and west from here, just over the border into Idaho Territory." Her legs seemed to give out slightly, and she grabbed the fence post for support. "I am sorry. I have not eaten much in 2 days. I ran out of supplies." He moved quickly then, catching her elbow. "When did you last have water?" "This morning. A creek about 10 miles back." Jackson cursed under his breath and guided her through the gate. She leaned on him more heavily than she probably wanted to, her pride evident in the way she tried to maintain some dignity, despite her obvious exhaustion. "My horse," she protested weakly, gesturing to where a tired-looking chestnut stood tied to a tree down the road. "I will get her in a minute. Right now, you need to sit down before you fall down." His cabin was small but well kept, a source of pride after years of living rough on the range. He helped Naomi to a chair at his wooden table and poured her water from the pitcher by the window. She drank it too fast, and he gently pulled the cup away. "Slowly, or you will make yourself sick." Naomi nodded, gasping slightly. Up close, he could see she was pretty beneath the dust and exhaustion. Her eyes were a striking green, unusual and clear. There was something in the set of her jaw that spoke of strength, of someone who did not give up easily. "Let me get your horse and some food started," he said. "Then you can tell me everything." By the time he had settled her horse in his small barn and returned to the cabin, Naomi had her head down on the table, asleep. Jackson stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her. Something about her presence had already changed the air in his home. He had lived alone for 7 years now, ever since his wife Elizabeth died in childbirth along with their son. He had grown accustomed to the silence, even preferred it. But looking at this woman, exhausted from a journey she had no obligation to make, Something shifted in his chest. He started a fire in the stove and put on coffee and beans. The noise woke her and she sat up quickly, disoriented. "Easy," he said. "You are safe here." Naomi rubbed her face, leaving clean streaks through the dust. "I apologize. I did not mean to fall asleep." "You rode 3 weeks alone to deliver a message. I think you have earned a rest." He set the coffee on to boil and turned to face her. "Tell me about Paradise Valley. Tell me about my brother." She took a deep breath, accepting another cup of water. "I have lived there my whole life. My father, Peter Olsen, has a ranch there. Small, but it was enough for us. The valley has about 40 families, maybe 200 people total. Good land, good water, at least it was." "What happened?" 2 years ago, a mining company bought land at the head of the valley. Continental Mining Corporation. They found silver in the mountains, started a big operation. At first, it seemed like it might be good for us. More people meant more business. But then they built a dam. Jackson poured coffee for both of them as she continued. "They said they needed the water for their operation. Redirected the whole river. What used to flow through the valley now goes to their mining camp. We get maybe a quarter of what we used to. The first summer was hard. Last summer was worse. This year—" her voice broke slightly. "This year the crops are failing completely. The cattle are dying. The company has agents coming around, offering to buy land for a fraction of what it is worth. And people are selling. Some have no choice. The Hendersons left last month. The Wungs left in June. 3 other families before that." She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. "Your brother arrived 2 years ago just as the company was building the dam. He bought the old Miller place, fixed it up. He tried to organize us to fight back legally. He even traveled to the territorial capital, tried to get the governor to intervene. And the mining company has friends in high places. Nothing happened. Your brother came back and said we would have to find another way." She met his eyes. "He is a good man, Mr. Xavier. He has been teaching the children, helping families hold on. When he heard I was leaving to find help from my aunt in Missoula, he asked me to find you instead." "Why me? We have not spoken in 7 years." Naomi set down her cup. "He said you were the best cattleman he ever knew. That if anyone could figure out how to bring water back to the valley, it would be you. And he said that despite everything, you were his brother, and you would come if you knew people needed help." Jackson turned away, staring out the window at the darkening sky. The last time he saw William, they had fought bitterly. William wanted to sell the family ranch after their father died, to go find his own way. Jackson wanted to keep it, to honor their father's legacy. They had said terrible things to each other. William left, and Jackson had been too proud to reach out afterward. Then Elizabeth died, and Jackson sold the ranch himself, unable to bear the memories. He had drifted for a few years before settling here in Montana, starting small. "There is more," Naomi said quietly. "The company has hired men. Enforcers. They are getting more aggressive. Last month they burned out the Petersons when they refused to sell. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. Some people think we should just leave, take what we can get and start over somewhere else. What do you think?" "I think that land is ours. My mother is buried there. My grandfather built our house with his own hands. I think running away just tells men like that they can do whatever they want." Her voice hardened. "I think we fight." Jackson turned back to her and saw the fire in her eyes. Despite her exhaustion, despite having every reason to give up, she was ready to fight. He felt something stir in him that had been dormant for years. "Eat something," he said, ladling beans into a bowl. "Get some rest. In the morning we will make plans. You will come." Hope flooded her face. "William is my brother, and what you describe is not right." He set the bowl in front of her. "But I need you to understand something. I am one man. I do not know what I can do against a mining company with resources and hired guns. You are not one man, Naomi said, picking up her spoon. You are one more than we were yesterday, and that is a start. She ate slowly, forcing herself not to rush despite her obvious hunger. Jackson made up his bed for her, insisting he would sleep in the barn. She protested, but he would not hear arguments. Once she finished eating, she could barely keep her eyes open. "Thank you," she said as she stood by the bedroom door, "for believing me, for agreeing to help. Get some sleep, Naomi. We have a long journey ahead." After she closed the door, Jackson sat at his table with his brother's letter, reading it again by lamplight. 7 years of silence. 7 years of pride and stubbornness on both sides. And now William needed him. Jackson felt the weight of those lost years pressing on his chest. He also could not stop thinking about Naomi Olsen. There was something about her, beyond her obvious courage. The way she spoke, the strength in her despite her situation, the fire in her eyes when she talked about fighting back. She reminded him of Elizabeth in some ways, the same determination, but there was something else too. Something that made him aware he had been alone too long. He shook his head, pushing the thought away. She had ridden 3 weeks to find help for her home, not to have some lonely rancher develop feelings for her. He needed to focus on the problem at hand. Jackson spent the next hour taking inventory of what he had. Money saved from selling cattle, supplies, weapons. He would need to make arrangements for his property while he was gone, ask his neighbor Tom Brennan to watch the place. By the time he headed to the barn to sleep, he had the beginnings of a plan forming. In the morning, he woke to the smell of coffee. He entered the cabin to find Naomi already up, her hair washed and rebraided, wearing the same dress but looking considerably more alive than the night before. "I helped myself to your wash basin," she said. "I hope you do not mind." "Not at all. You look better. I feel almost human again." She poured him coffee. "I have been thinking about the route back. If we leave tomorrow, we can make better time than I did coming here. I was being cautious, avoiding main roads, but together we can travel faster." "We leave today," Jackson said. "This afternoon, after I make arrangements with my neighbor." "Today?" She looked surprised. "Do you not need time to prepare? Every day we delay is another day the valley suffers." He sat down and accepted the coffee. "Besides, I have been preparing since last night. I know what we need." They spent the morning packing. Jackson loaded 2 pack horses with supplies, including tools he thought might be useful. He rode over to the Brennan place and explained he had to leave for a few weeks, maybe longer. Tom agreed to watch his cattle and property in exchange for half the profit from any calves born while he was gone. By early afternoon, they were ready. Naomi sat on her chestnut mare, looking considerably better than when she arrived. Jackson mounted Sadie and took one last look at his cabin. "Second thoughts?" Naomi asked. "Just making sure I remember what home looks like," he said, "in case this gets complicated." "It is already complicated," she replied, "but I think complicated is better than impossible." They rode south, and Jackson found himself watching Naomi as much as the trail. She sat her horse well, and despite her ordeal, she seemed energized by having help, by not being alone anymore. They talked as they rode, and he learned more about her life. She was 24, had grown up on the ranch with her father after her mother died when she was 12. She had a younger sister, Martha, who was 19 and engaged to the blacksmith's son. Her father was stubborn and proud, had initially refused to let her make this journey, but she had snuck away in the night, leaving a note. "He is probably furious with me," she said with a slight smile, "but he will forgive me if I come back with help." "Tell me more about the valley," Jackson said. "The land, the water, everything." She described it in detail, the way the river used to flow down from the mountains, spreading through the valley in three main branches, the rich soil that grew wheat, corn, and hay, the grasslands perfect for cattle, the mountains on three sides protecting them from the worst weather, and the mining operation at the head of the valley where the river began. "Have you seen the dam yourself?" he asked. "Once. Last year. It is massive, stone and timber. They have guards there too. The company does not like people getting close." Jackson thought about this. A dam big enough to divert an entire river would be a serious structure. Taking it down would not be simple, even if they could get to it. And if it was guarded, it became even more complicated. "What about the territorial marshal?" he asked. "Has anyone appealed to the law? The nearest marshal is 3 days away in Boise. Your brother tried. The marshal said it was a civil matter, told us to take it to court. But the court costs money we do not have, and the company has lawyers." "Of course they do." Jackson was silent for a while, thinking. "The governor, as I said, your brother tried. The company has influence there." They camped that night by a stream, and Jackson noticed how Naomi went about making camp with practiced efficiency. She clearly knew how to take care of herself in the wilderness. They cooked salt pork and beans and sat by the fire as darkness fell. "Can I ask you something?" Naomi said, staring into the flames. "Go ahead." "Your brother said you had not spoken in years. What happened between you?" Jackson was quiet for a long time. "We fought about the family ranch after our father died. Both said things we should not have. Pride got in the way of apologizing. Then time passed and it got easier to stay silent than to reach out. Do you regret it? Every day?" He looked at her across the fire. "Especially after my wife died. I could have used family then, but I had pushed everyone away. I am sorry about your wife. It was 7 years ago. Time does not heal everything, but it makes it bearable." Naomi nodded. "My mother has been gone 12 years. Some days it feels like yesterday. Other days, I can barely remember her voice. That is almost worse." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the wilderness. Jackson found himself appreciating her presence more than he expected. She did not fill every silence with chatter, did not need constant reassurance. She was comfortable in her own skin, confident despite everything. "Tell me about your father," he said. "You said he is stubborn." She laughed, a warm sound that made him smile. "Stubborn does not begin to cover it. He is Norwegian, came to America when he was 17, built everything from nothing. He does not like accepting help, which is why he did not want me to leave. But he knows we cannot survive another year like this. And your sister, Martha, is sweet, more gentle than me. She wants a family, a quiet life. Her intended, David, is a good man. They were supposed to marry this summer, but they postponed it. Everything is on hold until we know if we have a future in the valley." "We will find a way," Jackson said, surprised by the certainty in his own voice. "You sound confident." "I am stubborn too. Runs in families." He stood and stretched. "We should get some sleep. Long days ahead." They traveled for 3 weeks, and Jackson found himself looking forward to their conversations more each day. Naomi was sharp, funny, and had opinions on everything from politics to poetry. She had educated herself through books ordered from the East, dreamed of maybe going to college someday, though she knew it was unlikely. "Women are starting to attend universities," she said one afternoon as they rode through rolling grassland. "Not many, but some. I read about it in a newspaper. Imagine that, sitting in a classroom learning medicine or law." "You would be good at it," Jackson said. "You are smart, determined." She glanced at him, something soft in her expression. "That is kind of you to say. Most men think women should stick to cooking and sewing." "Most men are fools," she laughed. "I think I might agree with that assessment." As they traveled, Jackson found himself noticing small things about her. the way she brushed hair from her face, her habit of humming softly as she rode, the strength in her hands from years of ranch work, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about something she cared about. He tried to push these observations away, reminding himself this was about helping his brother, not about developing feelings for a woman he barely knew. But the feelings grew anyway, quiet and persistent. They crossed into Idaho territory on the 20th day. The land grew more mountainous, and Naomi grew more animated as familiar landmarks appeared. "We are close," she said as they camped that night. "Tomorrow afternoon we will reach the valley." "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," she admitted. "What if you look at the situation and decide there is nothing to be done? What if I dragged you all this way for nothing?" Jackson moved closer to where she sat. "That will not happen. We will find a way. I promise you that." She looked up at him, and in the firelight he saw hope and fear mixed in her eyes. "Why are you really doing this? The truth. I told you, William is my brother. But you have not spoken in years. You could have sent him money, wished him luck, stayed home. Why come yourself?" Jackson sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Honestly, I have been drifting since Elizabeth died, going through the motions. I look at you, at what you are fighting for, and I remember what it is like to care about something, to be willing to fight for it. I needed a reason to be more than just a man existing day to day. Maybe your message brought hope to me too." Naomi was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she rested her head against his shoulder. "Thank you for saying that, for coming." Jackson held very still, aware of every point of contact between them. "You are welcome." They stayed like that until the fire burned low, neither one wanting to move, both aware that something had shifted between them during their long journey together. The next afternoon they rode into Paradise Valley. Jackson saw immediately what Naomi meant. The valley was beautiful, nestled between mountain ranges with good flat land that should have been lush and green. Instead, it was brown, struggling. The river that should have been flowing strong through the center was barely a trickle, the bed wide and dry. They passed a few ranches, and people came out to stare as they rode by. Word must have spread quickly because by the time they reached the Olsen ranch, a crowd had gathered. A tall, broad-shouldered man with graying blonde hair stood on the porch. His face was weathered and stern, but his eyes showed relief when he saw Naomi. She dismounted and ran to him. "Papa, I am home." Peter Olsen hugged his daughter tightly, then held her at arm's length. "You disobeyed me. You snuck away like a thief in the night. I did what needed to be done." He looked past her to Jackson. "And you brought back a cowboy, one cowboy against a mining company." Jackson dismounted, meeting the older man's challenging stare. "Jackson Xavier, sir, and I am here to help however I can." "You are William's brother," a voice called from the crowd. A young man pushed forward, and Jackson recognized him instantly, despite the years. William was 28 now, taller than Jackson remembered, with their father's dark hair and their mother's blue eyes. The brothers stared at each other for a long moment. Then William crossed the distance between them and pulled Jackson into a fierce embrace. "You came," William said, his voice thick. "I did not think you would, but you came." "I am sorry," Jackson said, the words spilling out. "For everything I said, for letting pride keep us apart. I am sorry, too." William pulled back, gripping Jackson's shoulders. "Thank you for coming." The crowd pressed closer, everyone talking at once, asking questions. Jackson felt overwhelmed until Naomi's voice cut through the noise. "Everyone, please. Let them breathe. Mr. Xavier has traveled 3 weeks to get here. Let him rest, and tomorrow we can discuss what comes next." The crowd reluctantly dispersed, though people kept glancing back with expressions of hope and curiosity. Peter Olsen gestured for them to come inside. The Olsen home was simple but comfortable. A young woman who looked like a softer version of Naomi appeared from the kitchen, squealing when she saw her sister. "Naomi, you are back. We were so worried." "I am fine, Martha. This is Jackson Xavier, William's brother." She made introductions, and Martha shook his hand shyly. David, her intended, stood protectively near her, a solid young man with a blacksmith's build. They sat around the large kitchen table, and Peter poured whiskey for the men, coffee for the women. Jackson noticed how Martha and David sat close, how Peter kept glancing at Naomi as if assuring himself she was really home. This was a family, close and connected, exactly what he had lost and missed. "Tell me everything," Jackson said. "William, start from the beginning." His brother explained the situation in detail, confirming and expanding on what Naomi had told him. The dam had been completed 18 months ago. The first season after, they hoped it was just adjustment, that the company would work with them. But it became clear the company wanted them gone. The land would be more valuable to them without pesky ranchers demanding water rights. "They are betting we will all sell cheap and leave," William said. "Then they can control the whole valley, use it for their operations." "What about water rights? Those should be protected by law," Jackson said. "Should be," Peter interjected, his accent thick. "But law is for rich men. Company has lawyers, judges, territorial representatives. We have nothing." "We have right on our side," Martha said softly. "That has to count for something." David squeezed her hand. "Right does not matter much when you are starving." "Do not talk like that," Martha said. "I am being realistic. Half the families are ready to sell. Can you blame them?" "Yes, I can," Naomi said sharply. "This is our home." "Some things matter more than pride," David shot back. "That is enough," Peter said. "No fighting. Not tonight." Jackson listened to the exchange, understanding the tension. These people were at their breaking point, split between those who wanted to fight and those who wanted to cut their losses. "How many men does the company have at the dam?" he asked. "Maybe a dozen," William said. "Armed. They also have men in town, more at their mining camp. Maybe 40 in total who could be called on if there was trouble." "And how many able-bodied men in the valley?" "Maybe 30 if everyone agreed to act, but they would not. Some are too old, some too scared, some already planning to leave." Jackson thought about the numbers. Any direct confrontation would be suicide. They needed something smarter. "I need to see the dam," he said. "And the land around it. Maybe there is another way to bring water to the valley." "I will take you tomorrow," William offered. "We all will," Naomi said. "I want to see it again with fresh eyes." Peter frowned. "This is not work for women." "Papa, I just rode 6 weeks across 2 territories. I think I can handle a ride up to the dam." Jackson hid a smile at her tone. He was learning that when Naomi set her mind to something, arguing was pointless. That night, he slept in the barn at his own insistence. William came out later with blankets and another bottle of whiskey. The brothers sat in the hay, passing the bottle back and forth. "I am glad you came," William said. "Not just for the water situation. I have missed you, Jackson." "I have missed you too. I was a fool to let pride keep us apart." "We both were." William took a drink. "Naomi is special, is she not?" Jackson felt his face heat. "She is brave, determined. She is beautiful too, and smart. And if I am reading things right, you noticed all of that during your journey here, William. I am not blind. I saw how you looked at her, how she looked at you. I am just saying my brother could do far worse than Naomi Olsen. I am here to help with the water situation. Nothing else." William laughed. "Keep telling yourself that. But I know you, Jackson. You have been alone too long, and life is short. If you have found someone who makes you feel alive again, do not let her slip away because you are scared." Jackson did not answer, but his brother's words echoed in his head long after William returned to the house, where he was staying with another family. He thought about the past 3 weeks, about the way he felt when Naomi smiled, the comfort of her presence, the way she had fit against his shoulder by the campfire. He was falling in love with her. Had been for days now, and that terrified him. Morning came early. Jackson woke to find Naomi already in the barn, saddling her horse. "You are up early," he said, standing and stretching. "Could not sleep, too much on my mind." She glanced at him. "Did you sleep well?" "Well enough." He moved to help her with the saddle, his hands brushing hers as he tightened the cinch. They both froze for a moment at the contact before Naomi stepped back. "We should get breakfast before we ride out," she said, her voice slightly breathless. The group that assembled after breakfast included Jackson, Naomi, William, and David, who knew the mountain trails well. Peter wanted to come, but his leg was bothering him, an old injury acting up. Martha stayed behind to tend to ranch chores. They rode for 3 hours into increasingly rough terrain. The mountains rose dramatically around them, and Jackson could see where the river would have flowed naturally down into the valley. Now, the riverbed was dry, diverted by the dam they were approaching. They stopped in a stand of trees about a quarter-mile from the dam site. Even from that distance, Jackson could see it was an impressive structure, maybe 40 feet high, built of stone and timber, blocking the natural flow of the river and sending it east instead of south into the valley. "There," William pointed. "You can see their operation. The water flows through sluices to their mining camp. They use it for hydraulic mining, blasting hillsides to get at the silver." Jackson studied the area carefully. Guards were visible, 3 of them, armed with rifles. The dam itself looked solid, well built. Taking it down would require either a lot of explosives or a lot of manpower, probably both. And that assumed they could get past the guards. "What is on the other side of that ridge?" he asked, pointing east. "More mountains, eventually drops into another valley." "Why?" "Just trying to understand the geography. Is there any other water source for the valley? Small streams, springs? Nothing that would sustain all the ranches?" Jackson was quiet, thinking. There had to be another solution, something he was not seeing. He studied the dam for another hour, making mental notes before they headed back. That evening, the Valley families gathered at the Olsen ranch for a meeting. About 50 people crammed into the barn, sitting on hay bales and standing along the walls. Jackson stood near the front with William, facing a sea of faces showing hope, skepticism, and desperation in equal measure. William made introductions, explaining who Jackson was and that he had come to help. The response was mixed. Some people seemed energized by the idea of an outsider bringing fresh perspective. Others clearly thought one more person would make no difference. An older man with a long gray beard stood up. "With respect, Mr. Xavier, what can you do that we have not already tried? We have appealed to every authority. We have tried negotiating with the company. We have even talked about buying water from them, but they will not deal with us." "What makes you think you can change anything?" Jackson had expected this. "I do not have all the answers yet, Mr. Ferguson, Harold Ferguson, Mr. Ferguson. But I have been thinking about this from every angle. The company has resources and legal protection. Fighting them directly will not work, but there might be other options." "Like what?" a woman called out. "I need more time to evaluate, but I am wondering if we can find a way to access water without going through the company. Maybe digging wells deeper. Maybe diverting one of the side streams. Maybe building our own dam on a different part of the river." "We have tried wells," another man said. "Not enough water that deep, and the side streams are too small, they dry up completely in summer." "What about buying land upstream?" Jackson suggested. "If we had access to the river before it reaches their dam, We could divert it ourselves. The company owns all the land at the head of the valley, Williams said. They bought it up 2 years ago before anyone realized what they were planning. Jackson felt frustration building. Every option seemed blocked, but he was not ready to give up. Then we go back to the legal route. We find a lawyer willing to take the case, argue that the company does not have the right to divert an entire river that served this valley for generations. With what money? Peter Olsen asked. A good lawyer costs more than most of us make in a year, and even if we could afford it, the case could take years. We do not have years. The meeting continued for another hour, but it was clear people were losing hope. They had traveled this ground before, exhausted every option they could think of. Jackson's arrival had sparked brief optimism, but that was fading as reality set in. After everyone left, Jackson sat on the porch with Naomi, both of them staring out at the dark valley. "I am sorry," he said. "I thought I could help, but I am not seeing a clear path forward." "You have been here 1 day," Naomi said. "Do not give up yet." "I am not giving up. I am just realizing this is more complicated than I thought. Everything worth fighting for is complicated." She turned to look at him. "Do you know what I thought when I first saw you? I thought you looked like a man who had stopped fighting, like you were just going through the motions of living without really being alive. That is pretty accurate. But then, on our journey here, I saw that change. You started coming back to life. You laughed, you told stories, you started engaging with the world again. Do not lose that now. Do not let one difficult day make you shut down again." Jackson met her eyes. In the moonlight, she was beautiful, strong, everything he had been missing without knowing it. "You are remarkable, you know that. I am stubborn. There is a difference." "No, you are remarkable." He reached out and took her hand, half expecting her to pull away. She did not. "Naomi, these past 3 weeks." "I know," she said softly. "I have felt it too." They sat in silence, hands clasped, both aware they were crossing some invisible line but unable to stop. "This is probably not the right time," Jackson said, "with everything happening." "There is never a right time," Naomi interrupted. "My mother used to say that. She said if you wait for the perfect moment, you will wait forever. Life does not work that way." Jackson stood, pulling her up with him. They faced each other in the moonlight, and he could feel his heart pounding. "I am falling in love with you. I have been since about day 3 of our journey, and I need you to know that, even if the timing is terrible, even if I should focus solely on the problem at hand." Naomi's face broke into a smile, radiant and full of joy. "The timing is perfect, actually. Because I am falling in love with you too. And knowing that, having that to hold on to will make whatever comes next bearable." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and she kissed him back with equal tenderness. It felt like coming home, like finding something he did not know he had lost. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "We should probably keep this between us for now," Naomi said. "People have enough to worry about without gossip about us." "Agreed, though I suspect your father and my brother already know." "Oh, everyone knows," Naomi laughed. "People talk." "And we were not exactly subtle on the ride up to the dam." "We were completely professional," Jackson protested. "You helped me dismount by putting your hands on my waist and holding on for 3 full seconds longer than necessary. That was for safety." She laughed again, and he loved the sound of it. They went inside eventually, parting at the stairs with another quick kiss, both already dreading the morning when they would have to act like nothing had changed. Jackson lay awake for a long time that night, his mind racing between thoughts of Naomi and thoughts of the water problem. There had to be a solution he was not seeing. The company was not invincible. No one was. An idea started forming, vague at first, then gaining clarity. It was risky, maybe illegal, definitely dangerous. But it might work. The next morning, Jackson asked William to take him back up to the dam, just the two of them. They rowed out early, and Jackson spent several hours studying the structure from different angles, always staying out of sight of the guards. "What are you thinking?" William finally asked. "I am thinking that dam is the problem and the solution. Take it down, the water flows naturally again. We cannot just blow up a dam. That would be destruction of property, maybe even considered an act of violence. They would hunt us down." "I know. Which is why we need to do this carefully, legally if possible." Jackson turned to his brother. "What if we could prove the dam is unsafe? That it threatens the mining camp downstream if it fails? The company would be forced to make modifications, maybe even take it down completely." "Is it unsafe?" "Not that I can see. But what if we made it appear unsafe? Created cracks in the structure, made it look like it might fail? If the territorial engineer came to inspect and agreed it was dangerous, the company would have to act." William was quiet, thinking. "That could work. But getting to the dam to damage it without being caught, that is nearly impossible. Not if we create a distraction. Something that draws the guards away long enough for a few of us to get in and do what needs to be done." They spent the rest of the day planning, working through details. It would require coordination, people they could trust absolutely, and timing. They would also need someone with engineering knowledge to make the damage look authentic. Back at the ranch that evening, they brought Peter, Naomi, David, and a few other trusted Valley residents into the plan. The reactions were mixed. "This is dangerous," Peter said. "If you are caught, they will hang you for sabotage." "We will not get caught," Jackson said with more confidence than he felt. "And the alternative is watching the valley die slowly." "I am in," Naomi said immediately. "No," Jackson and Peter said simultaneously. Naomi glared at them both. "I am not a child. I have as much right to fight for this valley as anyone." "Your job was to bring help," Peter said. "You did that. Now let the men handle the rest." "The men have been handling it for 2 years and gotten nowhere," Naomi shot back. "I am in and you cannot stop me." Father and daughter stared at each other. Finally, Peter sighed. "You are as stubborn as your mother, fine, but you stay at the back, away from danger." "I will be wherever I am needed most," Naomi said. Jackson wanted to argue to keep her safe, but he knew it was pointless. Besides, she had every right to be involved. This was her home they were fighting for. Over the next week, they refined the plan. David, who had learned about structural engineering from a traveling engineer 2 years ago, would help Jackson figure out exactly how to damage the dam to make it look dangerous, without actually making it likely to fail catastrophically. They did not want to risk lives, even those of the mining company workers. They recruited 15 men and 3 women, including Naomi, who were willing to take the risk. They gathered supplies quietly, including black powder that David could access through his blacksmith shop. The story was that he needed it for blasting rocks for railroad work. Throughout this time, Jackson and Naomi stole moments together. A walk to check on cattle that turned into an hour talking by a stream. Helping with evening chores that ended with kissing in the barn. Every moment felt precious, especially knowing what was coming. "If something goes wrong," Jackson said one evening as they sat together in the hayloft, "if I get caught." "Do not talk like that," Naomi interrupted. "We have to talk about it. If I get caught, William will get you to safety." "Promise me you will go." "I will not leave you. Naomi, please. I need to know you will be safe. That is the only way I can do this." She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she nodded. "I promise. But you have to promise me something too. Promise you will be careful. That you will come back to me. I promise." He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "We are going to have a life together, Naomi. After this, we are going to build something good. Tell me about it. What does that life look like? Jackson smiled, playing along. We go back to Montana first, get my ranch in order, or we stay here, help rebuild the valley, whichever you prefer. Here, she said without hesitation. This is home, but I want to visit Montana, see where you lived. We will visit every year, and we will have a good house with a big porch. Children too, if we are blessed. How many? As many as you want. I always imagined a big family, lots of noise and chaos. Naomi laughed. I like the sound of that, a house full of love and noise. They sat together until late, talking about dreams and futures, both aware they were making promises that depended on everything going right in a plan with a dozen ways it could go wrong. The night they chose was moonless, dark enough to provide cover. The distraction would be a fire at one of the abandoned homesteads about 2 miles from the dam. Not close enough to seem like a direct threat, but close enough that the guards would likely go investigate, especially if it looked like it might spread to the company's property. At midnight, they gathered at a spot William had scouted, a ravine that provided cover to approach the dam from the south. 20 people total, all dressed in dark clothing, faces covered with bandanas. Jackson felt his heart pounding as he checked everyone's equipment. Remember, he said quietly, we are in and out fast. David and I will place the charges and create the cracks. The rest of you are lookouts and backup. If anything goes wrong, if guards come back before we are done, you scatter. Do not try to fight, just get away and get home. Understood? Everyone nodded. Naomi caught his eye, and even with her face covered, he could see her determination. The fire team left first, circling around to their target. 15 minutes later, they saw flames against the night sky. Within 5 minutes, they saw lights at the dam as the guards spotted the fire. 3 men rowed out toward it, leaving the dam unguarded. Now, Jackson whispered. They moved quickly, crossing the open ground to the dam. David went to work immediately, examining the structure by lamplight, showing Jackson where to place small charges of black powder. They used just enough to create cracks, make it look like the structure was failing. David also chiseled at the stone in several places, making existing small cracks larger. Jackson was so focused on the work that he did not hear the footsteps until someone shouted, "Hey, who is there?" He spun around to see a fourth guard, one they had not accounted for, emerging from a shed near the dam. The man was raising his rifle. Jackson ran at him, tackling him before he could fire. They struggled, and Jackson managed to knock the rifle away, but the guard was strong, well trained. They rolled across the ground, trading blows. Then Naomi was there, holding a large rock. She brought it down on the guard's head, not hard enough to kill but enough to stun him. The man went limp. "Tie him up," Jackson gasped, getting to his feet. "David, are we done?" "Almost. 2 more minutes." Those 2 minutes felt like hours. Jackson kept watch, expecting more guards at any moment. Finally, David nodded. "It is done. Let us go." They ran, all of them, back across the open ground to the ravine. Behind them, they heard shouting as the other guards returned, saw the one tied up, saw the damage to the dam. But by then, the Valley group was long gone, splitting up and heading home by different routes. Jackson, Naomi, William, and David rode hard for an hour before stopping to catch their breath. "That was too close," William said, his voice shaking slightly. "But we did it," David said. "I created enough damage that it will look like structural failure. And I made sure to hit points that will definitely show up in any engineering inspection. Now we wait," Jackson said, "and hope they take it seriously." They rode back to the valley separately, arriving just before dawn. Jackson helped Naomi inside her house, both of them exhausted. Peter was waiting, his face tight with worry. "You are back. Safe?" "Safe," Naomi confirmed. "It is done, Papa." Peter pulled her into a fierce hug. Your mother would have been terrified and proud all at once, just like I am. The next 2 days were tense. Word came that the mining company had brought in an engineer to inspect the dam. There was talk in the town of structural concerns, of possible failure. The company was taking it seriously. On the third day, William rode to town and returned with news. The territorial engineer is coming to inspect. Company is worried. If the dam fails, it could flood their mining operation, kill workers. They are taking no chances. So the plan worked, David said. Maybe. Let us wait and see what the official says. The territorial engineer arrived 2 days later, a serious man named Howard Grant, who took his job seriously. He spent an entire day examining the dam, making notes, consulting with the company's engineer. The valley held its breath. Grant's report was delivered to the territorial governor and the mining company simultaneously. William got a copy through a clerk he knew in town and brought it back to read aloud to everyone gathered at the Olsen ranch. It is my professional opinion that the dam shows signs of structural failure that pose significant risk to downstream operations and personnel. I recommend immediate modifications to reduce pressure on the structure, including releasing at least 50% of the current water storage back to its natural flow path through Paradise Valley. Further, I recommend a comprehensive rebuild of the dam foundation, which will require at least partial deconstruction of the current structure. Cheers erupted in the barn. People were crying, hugging, celebrating. Jackson felt relief wash over him so strong he almost staggered. They had done it. The valley would get its water back. Peter Olsen raised his hand for quiet. This is good news. Very good, but we are not done yet. The company will fight this. They will look for ways around it. We must stay vigilant. He was right. Over the next week, the mining company tried to argue with the findings, brought in their own engineers. But Grant's report was thorough and backed by territorial authority. The company had no choice but to comply or risk being shut down entirely if the dam failed and people died. Within 2 weeks, water began flowing back into Paradise Valley. At first it was a trickle, but each day brought more. The riverbed began to fill. Springs that had gone dry started flowing again. The change was almost immediate. The brown grass began showing green. The air felt different, smelled different. The valley came alive again. There was a celebration at the Olsen ranch that lasted 2 days. People brought food, music, dancing. There was a joy in the air that Jackson had rarely witnessed, the kind of happiness that comes from fighting for something and winning. During the celebration, Jackson and Naomi finally stopped hiding their relationship. They danced together openly, and when he kissed her in front of everyone, the crowd cheered. Peter approached them later, his stern face softening. "You are good for my daughter," he said to Jackson, "and you saved our home. You have my blessing if you are looking for it." "I am, sir. I plan to ask Naomi to marry me." "Then I suggest you do it properly. We Norwegians appreciate tradition." Jackson laughed. "I will remember that." He proposed that evening as the sun set over the valley now green and alive with water. He knelt in the grass by the river, and Naomi cried as she said yes. They were married a month later in a ceremony that brought together the entire valley. William stood as Jackson's best man, and Martha as Naomi's maid of honor. It was simple and beautiful and everything they needed. After the wedding, they built a house on a piece of land Peter gave them as a wedding gift. It had the big porch Jackson had dreamed of, with a view of the river and mountains. Jackson split his time between his ranch in Montana, which he sold a year later, and building up their cattle operation in Paradise Valley. The mining company continued operations, but with the modified dam system, there was enough water for everyone. The valley prospered. Families returned. New families arrived. The town of Paradise, barely a collection of buildings before, grew into a real community. Jackson and Naomi's first child was born 2 years after they married, a boy they named William Peter, honoring both their families. He had his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair. 16 months later, their daughter arrived, Elizabeth Rose, named for Jackson's first wife with Naomi's blessing. She understood that honoring the past did not diminish the present. More children followed over the years. The house filled with noise and chaos, just as Jackson had dreamed. On summer evenings, he would sit on that big porch with Naomi, watching their children play in the yard, listening to the sound of the river, and marvel at how one moment of courage, one woman appearing at his gate with a message, had changed everything. William married a school teacher who came to the valley 2 years after the water returned. They built a house nearby and had children who grew up playing with Jackson and Naomi's children. The brothers saw each other almost daily, making up for years of separation with years of closeness. Peter lived to see all his grandchildren, holding the youngest just days before he passed peacefully in his sleep at 78. Martha and David had 4 children and ran the blacksmith shop together, with Martha keeping the books and David at the forge. The valley continued to grow and prosper. The mining operation eventually shut down 10 years later when the silver ran out, but by then, Paradise Valley had become known throughout Idaho Territory as prime cattle country. People came from all over to buy stock raised in that valley, fed by mountain water and green grass. Jackson sometimes thought about that September evening in 1883 when he rode up to his gate in Montana and found Naomi waiting there, desperate and determined. He thought about how close he had come to sending her away, to staying in his comfortable isolation. But she had brought him more than a message about a valley needing water. She had brought him hope, purpose, love, family, everything he thought he had lost forever. And in helping save her valley, he had saved himself. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Jackson and Naomi stood by the river with their children and grandchildren around them. The valley was lush and green, cattle grazed peacefully, and the sound of water flowing filled the air. Jackson pulled his wife close, and she rested her head on his shoulder just as she had that night by the campfire so many years ago. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For being brave enough to ride 6 weeks alone to find help. For believing in me when I did not believe in myself. For giving me a reason to live again." Naomi smiled up at him. "Thank you for being the kind of man who sees a stranger at his gate and chooses to help. For being willing to fight for people you did not know. For loving me and this valley as much as I do." Their oldest son, William Peter, now 18 and preparing to start his own ranch nearby, watched his parents with his younger siblings. The family had gathered for a special occasion, the dedication of a monument in the town square honoring those who had fought to save Paradise Valley. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. The territorial governor himself attended, giving a speech about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Names were read of those who had participated in the plan to damage the dam, though the specific details of what they had done were carefully worded to avoid admitting to any crimes. Time and success had softened those edges, turned vigilante action into heroic necessity. Jackson stood when his name was called, accepting thanks from the community. But he made sure to emphasize that he had been only one part of a larger effort, that the real credit belonged to everyone who refused to give up, who believed their home was worth fighting for. As the years continued to pass, Jackson and Naomi watched their children grow, marry, and have children of their own. The house they had built became the heart of a sprawling family compound as their children built homes nearby. Sunday dinners brought together 30 or more people, multiple generations sharing food and stories. Jackson taught his sons and grandsons everything he knew about ranching, about cattle, about reading weather and land and water. Naomi taught her daughters and granddaughters to be strong, to stand up for what they believed in, to never let anyone tell them they were less than equal. The story of how Paradise Valley was saved became legend, passed down through generations. Children grew up hearing about the brave woman who rode alone across territories to find help, about the cowboy who risked everything for people he did not know, about a community that stood together against powerful forces and won. In 1920, Jackson celebrated his 69th birthday. Naomi was 61, still strong and sharp despite some gray in her hair and lines around her eyes. Their children were grown, their grandchildren numerous, and great-grandchildren were starting to appear. The valley had changed with the times. The town had electricity now. Automobiles sometimes drove down the main street, and there was talk of paving the roads. But the river still flowed, the land was still good, and families still worked hard to make their livings from cattle and crops. The valley remembered its history, honored its past, and looked toward its future with hope. Jackson's health began failing that winter. He had lived a hard life and it caught up with him. By spring, he was spending most days in bed with Naomi by his side. Their children visited constantly, and the house was never empty. On a warm May afternoon, with windows open to let in the breeze carrying the scent of grass and water, Jackson woke from a nap to find Naomi reading in the chair beside his bed. "Still here," he said, his voice weak but warm. "Where else would I be?" She set down her book and took his hand. "You should be outside, beautiful day. Every day with you is beautiful." She squeezed his hand gently. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, but content." He looked at her, this woman who had changed his life. "I have no regrets, Naomi. These years with you, the family we built, the life we made together, I would not change anything. Neither would I." Tears filled her eyes. "You gave me everything I dreamed of and more." Their children and grandchildren began arriving as word spread that Jackson was awake and talking. The room filled with the people he loved most, and he spent his last hours surrounded by family, telling stories, laughing, making sure everyone knew how much he loved them. As the sun began to set, Jackson grew quieter. Naomi held his hand and their children gathered close. Jackson's last words were to his wife. "Thank you for waiting at my gate that day. Best thing that ever happened to me. And thank you for not sending me away," Naomi whispered back. Jackson Xavier died peacefully as the sun set over Paradise Valley, the land he had helped save, surrounded by the family he had built, holding the hand of the woman who had brought him back to life. Naomi lived another 15 years, dying at 76 in the same house, in the same bed, surrounded by the same kind of love. Her last request was to be buried next to Jackson on the hill overlooking the valley, where they could watch over the land and water and people they had fought so hard to protect. The valley continued, as valleys do. Families came and went, but many stayed, generation after generation. The Xavier and Olsen names remained prominent in the area, with descendants still ranching the same land, still benefiting from that long-ago decision to fight for what was right. Every September, on the anniversary of the day Naomi arrived at Jackson's Gate in Montana, the valley held a celebration. They called it Hope Day, commemorating the message of hope she had brought to an entire community. Children learned the story in school, acted it out in plays, grew up knowing that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they refused to give up. The monument in the town square remained, weathered by time but still standing, a reminder of what can be accomplished when people work together, when someone is brave enough to ask for help and someone else is brave enough to give it. And if on quiet evenings when the wind blows just right across Paradise Valley, if someone swears, they can hear laughter from the old Xavier house on the hill, or see shadows moving on the porch, well, people just smile and say that love like that never really dies. It just changes form, becoming part of the land and water and air, blessing the valley that brought two souls together and gave them both a reason to hope again. The legacy of Jackson and Naomi lived on not just in their descendants, but in the very character of Paradise Valley. The community they had helped save remained close-knit, looking out for each other, standing together when times got hard. That spirit of fighting for what is right, of not giving up in the face of overwhelming odds, became woven into the fabric of the place. In the years after their deaths, when drought came or prices fell or new challenges arose, someone would always invoke the story of Jackson and Naomi. They would remind everyone that their ancestors had faced a powerful mining company and won, that one woman's courage and one man's willingness to help had saved an entire valley. If they could do that, the argument went, we can face whatever comes our way, and they always did. Paradise Valley prospered through the 20th century and beyond, a testament to the power of hope, courage, and love. The river still flows through its heart, life-giving and constant, just as the love between a cowboy and the woman who appeared at his gate remained constant across all the years that followed. Their story became more than history. It became inspiration, proof that one person's desperate hope and another person's compassionate response could change not just individual lives but an entire community, rippling out through generations, creating a legacy that time could never erase.